Hello, my name is Julia Streets and welcome to the podcast series StreetsTalksTo. In every episode, I interview leaders from some of the most influential firms, bodies and initiatives in the financial services industry. We explore what's at the very forefront of innovation and change, and we think about the challenges facing firms and at the industry at large. We uncover the opportunities that exist both today and indeed as we look ahead. Because right now, every firm is looking to achieve two things: growth and/or transformation. And as a business, we help firms with three key offerings: campaigns, content, and coaching, because we never forget the human in the mix. We hope you enjoy the series, which you can find on all good podcast channels, and all the episodes are listed on our website, streetsconsulting.com. You can find these using the hashtag StreetsTalksTo, and thank you for listening. And welcome to StreetsTalksTo TradeHeader. TradeHeader has been recognised as one of the most innovative 2025 RegTech companies worldwide in the prestigious RegTech 100 listing. They are specialists in data standardisation and data integration with a 20-year track record in working with financial organisations. With extensive experience in capital markets and payments, TradeHeader empowers clients to efficiently integrate, enrich, and validate their diverse financial data across third-party platforms, in-house systems, and individual counterparties. They describe themselves as acting as the digital regulatory reporting rock for clients, translating regulations accurately into code. And this eliminates the need to sift through thousands of pages of PDF rules, and it ultimately makes adoption and compliance quicker, more accurate, and much more cost-effective. In addition, they offer expert-level training courses, helping clients to develop the knowledge and skills of their own workforces. And this is all to meet the data and regulatory challenges of tomorrow. So who better to tell us more than our two guests from TradeHeader, Marc Gratacos and Aleix Revilla. Marc Gratacos is the founder and the managing partner, and since 2003, he has worked with global financial institutions on various technology projects in trading, risk, and operations, primarily focused on the world of derivatives. In 2011, he founded TradeHeader and has been driving its development and growth ever since. So, Marc, great to see you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Julia. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and I'm delighted to say you brought a colleague with you. Today, we're joined by Aleix Revilla, who is the head of consulting services. Aleix's experience covers a wide range of complex financial products and business processes, from OTC derivatives to financing products, internal messaging development for investment banks, data integration between front office and back office systems, tooling development, software solutions, data conversion, and validation. He joined TradeHeader in 2012 and has been working with major financial global organizations. So, Aleix, thanks for being on the show.
Hello, Julia. Thanks for having us. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today.
But I'm really looking forward to this because everybody's talking about regulation. RegTech is hot right now. As I mentioned in the introduction, you've been named as one of the most influential firms. So let's get straight into it. Marc, can I come to you first? I'd love to get just your thoughts, your early thoughts on regulation, how it's changing, and what does that mean for firms in your world?
Yes, I think regulation is not a one-off project anymore. If I remember in 2008, 2009, we thought there is Dodd-Frank, EMIR, and that's it. And we know now that that's not the case anymore. It's an ongoing process. And this can be quite draining for people and also financially in terms of costs, but also in terms of draining the teams that are looking into that. In terms of regulation, there are two main reasons why things are changing constantly. One is that firms are looking to expand globally, right? So they're trying to reach new markets, and those markets are now regulated. They have regulations that you need to comply. The second main reason is that these regulations are changing constantly. They're being revised, updated, and improved every year. Last year, we had 4 main regulations that went into production. And this year, we're looking into new major regulations with updates, including HKMA in Hong Kong and also Canada. So this is quite a significant effort for firms that need to comply to all these jurisdictions.
And you work with firms of different shapes and sizes and locations and aspirations as well. Could you just talk to us a bit about what this means for them?
Yes, big businesses and also small firms find this challenging. I was in Asia a month ago and I was speaking to some of the teams there that are in charge of the regulations, and they are covering all the Asia Pacific regulations, and some of them are including the Middle East. That's very challenging. Compiling a team of people that is a combination of experts in the compliance domain, technology, and also business is an effort for firms. Resources are scarce and experts on these areas are costly to find. So it's a significant effort for small and big firms to create those teams. I think digital regulatory reporting can help the project of being able to codify the regulations into code and to be able to use a common interpretation of the industry. It can help to these firms, but it presents challenges as well that we will discuss during today's podcast.
Well, let's get into the question of digital regulatory reporting. And Alex, I'd love to bring you in here because, first of all, for the benefit of the listeners, what is it? And what are some of the challenges the industry is facing in adopting it?
Yeah, so I guess that's what everyone's wondering right now. So DRR, so this digital regulatory reporting, is a framework from ISDA that aims to digitize, standardize, and automate reg reporting. What's important here is that DRR is built on top of ISDA's open source common domain model, so CDM, which already standardizes derivative transactions, and then it adds on top this extra layer of analysis and implementation of these regulatory requirements so that they are ready to use by institutions in a much more cost-effective way. Because let's picture for a second the life of a compliance team in a financial institution, what Marc was referring to earlier. So we need to imagine that any regulatory body will be publishing their requirements typically in a set of PDF files with usually thousands of pages, quite dense wording, and they explain there the business requirements that firms need to report, which I can admit it's not always very clear and it needs quite a significant analysis. So you can imagine the amount of resources that firms are putting into basically analyzing these thousands of pages and just making sure that they get them right. Because at the end, it's not only about cost and it's not about resources and time allocation, it's also about the risk of interpreting the rules right. Plus, then mapping these business concepts into actual data points in the internal data formats, which in the context of regulatory reporting, we know that, well, these workflows are quite complex. So with this picture in mind, what we've done is as TradeHeader, we've been partnering with ISDA as co-creators of ISDA CDM initially and now as co-creators of DRR to put in the hands of users or financial institutions this framework that basically allows them to reduce this cost because they will have this industry standardization on how to interpret these rules and an implementation into code of a solution that basically they can just use and they don't need to basically do it themselves, right? I think that's the main benefit of DRR, and this is what it was created for. But then we, as maybe as standard geeks, let's say, we see also the other benefits, which is okay, since you're using DRR and you're standardizing your data internally, you're not only benefiting from reg reporting, but at the same time, at the end, you're standardizing your internal formats, which may benefit on other areas. For example, I don't know, collateral management, for instance, but any type of data integration in the future.
A couple of things really sort of stood out for me in your remarks there. So one was that actually you were involved, this isn't just about interpretation, you are involved with the co-creation of some of these rules and standards that are coming out. But also, if I want to pick up on another remark you just made there about workflows, and your clients will have all sorts of different workflows, work streams working all the time. I'd like to get a sense of how you help your clients prioritize and sift through these ever-changing workflows that they're challenged by.
Yeah, so at the end, what we do is so also with this is putting together in a set of working groups the industry experts and they're putting their needs in these working groups with the idea to basically standardize and have an industry consensus on what these regulatory challenges mean. So what we do is in these working groups we basically define and analyze together what these regulatory requirements are so that we have a common understanding of them and then a common implementation and standardized solution for all to use. This way, basically, what we can do is, as said earlier, not only reducing the cost because we already have this solution in place. But for me, more important is we are bearing the risk of a misinterpretation for one firm to not report a field correctly. So that's the idea, to put a commonality in this understanding.
And it's fascinating hearing you talk about how you're very much part of those working groups and the quest for standardization and consensus at a time which is rich with changing priorities, changing dynamics, and also not to mention rule rewrites that are happening all the time as well. You do have an FAQ on your website, so any listeners who are curious, go to tradeheader.com and you'll find the FAQs on that as well. I want to come back to this question about DRR. And Marc, can I come back to you? I mean, I think about this isn't just about dealing with compliance. This is about the business benefits that flow throughout the organization and sort of further upstream as well. So yeah, my thoughts really there are when you think about clients achieving compliance in one area, quite often we hear people talk about they have to kind of almost restart and reset when they're dealing with compliance in another area. And I know you've got some really interesting thoughts about that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Yes, that's right, Julia. I think there is a perception out there that it's starting all over again with each regulation. But I think the compliance teams, they don't really need to panic on that because we did a lot of research. We have done a lot of work on comparing different jurisdictions. And what we see is that 80% of the reportable fields are reusable from one jurisdiction to the other. There is a strong reusability between them. One of the reasons is because regulators are using a common layer of reporting fields. They're called the critical data elements, the CDE, and they're defined by IOSCO, the International Organization of Securities Commissions. Those fields, that common layer is reused across multiple jurisdictions. And that makes that 80% is being reached. So when you start a new jurisdiction, you only have to cover these 20%. For sure, you need to invest a lot on analysis. You need to make sure that these common layers of reporting fields are really with the same interpretation logic as the previous jurisdiction. But what I'm saying is that not all the hard work to meet a regulation is lost when you need to report to a new one. There is a good deal of reporting logic and implementation that you can reuse. You still need to access expertise to do this comparison and to make sure that the interpretation of the rule from one jurisdiction to the other is exactly the same. But there is a lot of reusability between them, and I think that's one of the clear benefits of DRR.
I'm sure listeners will be very relieved to hear that because also a lot of people are thinking about their international expansion plans, they're thinking about their jurisdictional requirements, and the complexity never goes away at all. Aleix, can I come back to you just when we think about the adoption? Let's get into sort of DRR adoption, if you like. Can you just give us a little insight into how clients are using DRR today and, who is adopting it?
Yeah, well, actually, recently, 4 major institutions have announced that they are using DRR. So we've seen Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BNP Paribas, and Pictet Group. And well, the list just goes on. But at the end, it's not something that just major institutions can adopt. Actually, from our perspective, I would even say that smaller firms are even more interested on that because typically they have less resources to put in this type of regulatory teams, right? And for us, I think from our perspective, we see 2 main ways to implement DRR. One is, okay, as final reporting solution. So we said we have this significant allocation of resources and time in analyzing PDFs and pages and then having all this cost of doing the things right. And DRR is actually a solution that does it for you. That's the obvious reason. But then there is also a second alternative, which is, okay, we know that regulatory reporting has been there for a while, and we know that firms have been investing in potentially in their internal solution, which is perfectly fine. But then let's use DRR as a benchmark to basically reduce the risk. So what we've seen as well, and for example, I think JP Morgan is one of those examples. We also recommend firms that even though if they have their internal solution, they can still use DRR to standardize their flows. Then check the report that DRR will be producing, and this way they can compare if they are aligned to this common industry practice, right? So this way they are reducing the risk and they are qualifying and kind of in a testing mode, let's say, that the reporting is correct. So I think that these are the two main areas where we can see DRR as a really good solution.
It's really fascinating to hear you talk about that, because so often we think about the benefits being very much the external point of view. But what you're saying there is that the internal benchmarking of internal processes, and I think very much of those tier 2, tier 3 firms where resourcing expertise is scarce, and yet the requirements are significant. Marc, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, if you would come in. And when we think about clients who don't have the resources or the expertise, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, I think there are four main steps. We see four main steps where firms can use DRR and can be simplified in terms of, first of all, take a look at the interpretation. There is no need to implement anything. Take a look at the common interpretation of DRR and compare that against your interpretation of the rules, right? So there is no need. I got this question from a client last year saying, I have no budget. I have a team of people, but how can I use DRR? And I said, first of all, get your the team that is in charge of interpretation and ask them to take a look at DRR and compare that against the interpretation that you have in your reporting engine. I think that's the first step, because in DRR, as we described, we have a common interpretation of the rules that has been agreed by the industry. Let's compare that against your interpretation and see if there are any differences. I think that's the first step. The second step is let's do a POC. Let's do a proof of concept that can be used, for example, as a benchmark against your internal implementation of the rules and see how it compares against the industry interpretation. A POC is a good way to be able to see how you can fit DRR in your internal organization. The third point would be to try to use DRR in your internal reporting engine. The idea would be to leverage the common interpretation of the industry and use that as part of your reporting solution. And finally, the fourth one is to think about DRR and CDM in a more strategic way. CDM, as the common domain model, is also covering other aspects beyond reporting and can be used for things like collateral management and margin calculations. Let's see internally in your organization how you can leverage CDM not only for reporting, but also in other use cases. I think these are the four steps which will simplify the journey to adopt DRR.
It's been a really fascinating conversation, because not only do we think about the context of regulation, the demands this is placing on organizations that are really facing some prioritization and resourcing challenges, that goes from everything around how you sit at the table and co-create. You're about bringing people together to align. You're going into organizations and challenging assumptions that they might be necessarily making about having to start from scratch if they're going to different jurisdictions. Thinking about actually the benefits of internal and external lenses on the challenges, but also some very practical next steps. And let's not forget the FAQ on the website as well. I have to say, in a really short period of time, I've been so fascinated by this conversation about everything that TradeHeader is doing and DRR and so much beyond. Aleix, thank you for joining us and for all your thoughts.
Thank you. It's been great, and we hope, we brought some light to the to TRR and regulatory reporting. So thanks a lot.
You certainly have. I can see why you got your listing in the top 100 for sure. And Marc, thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Julia. It's been a pleasure.
And to everybody, in case you're wondering how to find TradeHeader, it is tradeheader.com. And of course, you can find them on LinkedIn. Simply search for TradeHeader. To all our listeners, this has been Streets Talks to TradeHeader. Thank you for listening. I've been Julia Streets. And until next time, goodbye. This episode of Streets Talks 2 was produced by Podshop on behalf of Streets Consulting Limited. At Streets Consulting, we are a strategic business development, marketing and communications consultancy focused on helping financial services and technology clients around the world. Every client is focused on growth and transformation, and as fintech PR specialists, we are there to help them every step of the way. We do this through our 3 C's: campaigns, content, and coaching, because we never forget the human in the mix. You can find this episode on streetsconsulting.com and using the hashtag StreetsTalks2. And we can also be found on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Thanks for listening.